To my incredible audience, thank you for trusting me with your time and hearts. You won't regret this journey. I promise, by the end of this story, you'll feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every shadow lurking in human hearts. The moment I stepped through the front door, a strange emptiness met me. My own house felt foreign, as though someone had rearranged my life in my absence. My hands trembled as I set down the suitcase, and the faint smell of lavender, usually her signature scent, lingered faintly but hollowly. Something was off. Emily. I called, my voice catching somewhere between hope and dread. Silence answered me. A note rested on the kitchen counter, written in her flowing, elegant handwriting. I needed time. Go live your life. Don't wait for me. I laughed nervously, a hollow sound bouncing off the walls. Time? Time for what? I left without a fight, not knowing that my absence would become the opening act of a betrayal I wasn't yet ready to recognize. Weeks passed. I immersed myself in work, numbing the gnawing suspicion that this wasn't ordinary. And then came the calls, the messages dripping with intimacy I couldn't place. From who? But she always had excuses, always a way to laugh it off, and I believed her. I wanted to. It wasn't until the day I returned, unexpectedly early, fueled by some mixture of longing and a gut-wrenching need for answers, that I realized how deeply I had misjudged the quietness of our home. She was there, sitting casually on the couch, wine glass in hand, pretending as though nothing had changed. Mark, she said, eyes widening ever so slightly, masking what could have been guilt or relief. Emily, we need to talk, I said, each word deliberate, heavy with tension. My chest ached, not just with betrayal but with the fatigue of anticipating it for so long. She laughed softly, a sound that once brought warmth but now dripped of icy sarcasm. Talk. About what? You left. I lived. You should have too. I stared at her, the words sinking into me like a slow poison. You lived with who? Her eyes darted away, just a fraction, and in that subtle movement, the truth began to unfurl. The darkness I hadn't dared to imagine was already crouching in the corners of our home, waiting. Over the next few days, I noticed small things. The faint perfume that wasn't hers, the receipts tucked away in drawers, the late-night messages that disappeared too quickly to trace. Every clue built an invisible web of deceit, tightening around my heart. Yet she remained calm, unbothered, almost daring me to confront her fully. One evening, I followed her, not recklessly but carefully. The streets blurred past as I watched her slip into a building I didn't recognize. A warm glow escaped from the windows, laughter spilling out in waves I knew weren't mine. Inside, she was closer than I wanted to imagine, entwined in someone else's arms, the intimacy I had once reserved for me stolen and twisted into cruelty. I didn't confront her that night. I left, walking through empty streets, the night sky pressing down like judgment. Each step felt like I was leaving pieces of my own soul behind. When I finally faced her the next morning, I carried not anger, not yet, but a cold, calculating resolve. Emily, I know, I said quietly. The words were simple, but the weight in them made her flinch. You what? How? Her voice trembled, a mixture of fear and disbelief. I saw, I replied, letting the truth hang between us. Silence filled the room like a tangible fog. For a moment she cried, not the tears of remorse but tears of panic. And then came the confession, slow, deliberate, each word dripping venom and sadness intertwined. She had wanted freedom while I was away, a chance to explore desire without the chains of commitment. She had planned it, executed it, and thought herself clever. But in her calculations, she had not accounted for the darkness she would unleash by betraying me. I wasn't the man who had vanished quietly. I had returned, yes, and with me came not vengeance, but a clarity she would never escape. Days turned into nights of careful observation. I didn't shout. I didn't storm. I simply watched, listened, catalogued. Each revelation fueled a transformation in me. A somber, inevitable understanding that trust, once fractured, is like glass shattered over stone. One night, I confronted her again, standing in the dimly lit kitchen. You wanted consequences, I said softly, and now you have them. She looked at me, eyes wide, heart racing. But I wasn't speaking of anger. I was speaking of truth, the inescapable gravity of betrayal. The darkness that had shadowed our marriage had grown because of her choices. She had invited it, and I would let her face it fully. The weeks that followed were unbearable yet liberating. I removed her illusions of control. Every lie unraveled, every secret laid bare. She was left to reckon with the consequences of her actions, not through humiliation or revenge, but through the quiet, devastating erosion of the life she thought she could manipulate. In the final confrontation, I stood by the window, city lights flickering behind me, as she realized everything she had built on deceit was crumbling. Her voice shook, pleading for explanations, for forgiveness that I could not give. "Mark, please, it wasn't." "It was," I interrupted gently though firmly. "And now you must live with it. Every choice, every betrayal, every lie." She crumpled onto the floor, a mixture of despair and disbelief etched into her features. And in that moment, I understood the true weight of betrayal. Not just the hurt, but the awakening of a darkness within both hearts. One that reshaped reality entirely. I walked away then, leaving her in the ruins she had created, carrying with me the lessons of love and trust, of vulnerability and vigilance. And as I stepped into the night, I realized that some betrayals do more than break hearts. They illuminate the shadows, forcing you to confront the parts of yourself you never knew existed. The house remained silent but not empty. Shadows lingered in the corners, reminders of what had been, and what could never be again. And I, for the first time in months, breathed freely, not because of revenge, not because of victory, but because I had survived the darkness she had invited, and emerged whole.